Hi guys, so it's becoming increasingly clear that the British government has no intention of triggering Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol. They clearly had no intention last year and are still avoiding taking such action today. It's important to separate what politicians say in a select committee and what they say in the House of Commons, as the latter protects them. It basically allows them to lie. Select committees are a different beast, and it's becoming quite apparent to most people who understand the games that are being played by Boris Johnson's government that there's no tactical advantage in triggering Article 16, and that the British government understand that they are bound by law, that they need to carry out declarations and checks on goods moving from GB to NI. This was highlighted by BBC Northern Ireland.
Well, meanwhile, Brandon Lewis has also told MPs Irish sea border checks are a legal requirement of the UK's deal with the EU, and it's right that they continue. Last month, the former Agriculture Minister, Edwin Poots, ordered his officials to stop checks, but they're still happening pending the outcome of a court case. Let's speak to our economics and business editor, John Campbell, who is with me now. Should we be surprised by what Brandon Lewis had to say today on this?
Well, at one level, we shouldn't be surprised, because it's been clear since the protocol was signed in 2019 that the UK government had signed up to certain legally binding commitments, including checks on goods coming into Northern Ireland from GB. However, at times, ministers, from the Prime Minister down, have been a bit reluctant to admit that's what they had signed up to. And even
now, what he's saying here is that many ministers publicly and in the House of Commons have tried to avoid saying this, that yes, we are legally bound to carry out checks on goods moving from GB to NI. In the House of Commons, they said, we're going to maintain the internal market. The internal market must be respected. The EU must be flexible, things like this. But if you notice some of the rhetoric, they never actually said, and this is a problem for unionists, Brexiteer unionists, I should say, they never actually challenged the government on this. They never actually challenged the government to say, well, is it legal to carry out these checks? Because probably deep down, many of the unionist politicians understood, yes, it's legal. The UK government is legally bound to this because they signed up to it as part of the withdrawal agreement.
Even when Mr Poots made his move last month, some ministers were a bit circumspect about what their legal requirements are. But Mr Lewis was much more explicit. Let's hear what he had to say about those checks.
They are still ongoing. Our view is that they are a requirement, they are a legal requirement, and it's right that they are continuing. Of course, even taking those away doesn't necessarily in and of itself even solve some of the issues that businesses are having. Certainly for Great Britain to Northern Ireland trade in terms of the extra paperwork.
What did Brandon Lewis have to say about Article 16?
Well, Article 16 is that part of the protocol which says that if the deal is causing serious difficulties, then safeguard measures can be introduced, which would effectively be suspending parts of the protocol. Now, Mr Lewis repeated that the UK government's position is that the threshold has been met for using Article 16. However, he gave no indication that the government is going to use that any time soon. And he was pressed on, well, you're negotiating with the EU at the moment. You want to try and get a consensual resolution, but how long can that process go on for? And again, he wouldn't really commit. All he said is that they wanted to have this sorted out well in advance of the next general election, which is in 2024.
So, if you are a unionist, a Brexiteer unionist, and you're hoping for Boris Johnson to trigger Article 16, and the Northern Ireland Secretary said, getting rid of this isn't part of our manifesto, and our manifesto, we're not going to release it until 2024, then you have pretty much no hope of them triggering Article 16. And I've been saying this for almost a year now. Boris Johnson's government have been saying, yeah, we're getting ready to trigger Article 16. The conditions have been met. And the unionists, the Brexiteer unionists, I have to highlight because there are some unionists who understand reality. The DUP and the TUV don't. But the ones who don't understand reality are under this impression that if they put enough pressure on Boris Johnson, he will break and he will trigger Article 16. But as we know, Article 16 does not suspend the protocol. And kudos to Brandon Lewis for actually explaining it in the Select Committee on Monday, when he said, look, there are, it's a bit ironic that there are people who are demanding that the protocol be suspended are asking for Article 16 to be triggered, and there are people who don't want it suspended are asking for it not to be triggered, when Article 16 protects the protocol. And he's right on that. Article 16 is about suspending part of the protocol in order to get over a problem. And the British government have no intention, it seems, to touch the protocol until 2024. But I think what's happening here is this is all part of a plan to see what happens in May this year, because there are assembly elections taking place in Northern Ireland, and it's likely that the pro-protocol parties will win a majority, and the issue of the protocol will probably go away. Now, you'll have the protests and you'll have the complaining and you'll have the unionists trying to create problems, but if they don't have a majority, they'll have nothing to hold against the British government. At the moment, they're trying to say, well, we're going to we've suspended the executive because we haven't gotten our way on the protocol. But if a majority of parties in Northern Ireland support it, and it's shown in the Assembly to represent that, then the arguments for suspending the protocol become more and more difficult. I'm not saying they're going to go away. I'm just saying it's becoming more and more difficult for unionists to attack the protocol, because it will be clear that not just a majority of businesses support the protocol in Northern Ireland, which is the case, a majority of the public support it, but that will be backed up democratically. You will have an assembly that represents a majority in support of the protocol. At the moment, with the DUP being the biggest party until May, that's not the case. So where do we go from here? Well, I think what's going to happen is Boris Johnson's government are going to wait until what happens with the Assembly, see the result of that, and then decide if they're going to racket up this rhetoric regarding the protocol. I don't see that really happening. Unless something drastic happens and the Sinn Féin party doesn't win a majority, then perhaps we'll see some change. But at the moment, it seems the unionists are realizing that their time is over as a majority, and their last stab at holding on to power via the protocol is slipping away. The ironic part of all of this is that we warned the unionist community in Northern Ireland, if they support Brexit, it's going to damage the union. And many of them would not listen to that. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.